Well, I'm joined now by Ali Shihabi, Executive Director of the Arabia Foundation in Washington, and Sultan Barakat, Professor and Director at the Center for Conflict and Humanitarian Studies with the Doha Institute in Qatar, although in fact he's speaking to us from the north of England. Ali Shihabi in Washington, first of all. Here is the Foreign Minister saying that Qatar has been insulted and its sovereignty is being challenged, and its sovereignty is being challenged, isn't it?
Well, sovereignty is a relative thing, like human freedom is a relative thing. We don't have the freedom as human beings to harm our fellow human beings. So sovereignty does not allow you to undermine the security of your neighbors. When you have your three closest neighbors, all your land neighbors, and Egypt, taking a position against you, something is wrong, you see. So, and this is not a process, this is not a reaction that happened in a week or two. This is the result of 20 years of attempted dialogue, of mediation, of issues that the neighboring governments have had with Qatar attempting to undermine their security in multiple ways.
Yeah, but I think the point that Qatar is making is that if there's a problem, it's in Saudi Arabia and these other countries, because they take political opposition, peaceful, reasonable political opposition, as terroristic.
Well, I see there's a certain amount of hypocrisy in that. There was a very famous poet in Qatar who wrote a poem 5-6 years ago about the Arab Spring coming to Qatar. And the Emir of Qatar had him arrested, thrown in jail, and sentenced to life imprisonment. And he was released just recently after 5 years in jail, after a tremendous outcry across the world. This was a poet who called for the Arab Spring to come to Qatar. So there's a huge amount of hypocrisy there.
Let me put
Qataris to claim that when a poet, who simply wrote a poem calling for the Arab Spring to come to Qatar, was thrown in jail and sentenced to life imprisonment.
Let's put that to Sultan Barakat with the Doha Institute in Qatar. There's the foreign minister saying that Qatar is so open and democratic and so on, and yet, you speak out, you go to jail.
I mean, I don't think he said it's a democracy. He said we run a consultative monarchy, which is different from an open democracy. Having said that, and I'm not here really to defend the position of Qatar in any way, just to reflect on Mr. Shihabi's example. For this one example that is given of a poet, people can give hundreds and thousands of examples of people who've been tortured, treated badly in all four countries. I mean, Egypt is full of examples. Same with Saudi Arabia, the recent attempts by United Arab Emirates to shut the media, to control the WhatsApp, Twitter accounts, etc., etc. All those measures are not taken in Qatar. And I think the position Qatar has pursued so far in this crisis has really demonstrated what they genuinely believe in, of a culture of openness and dialogue. Even the fact that the foreign minister, this is his second speech in a week. First one was done in Washington. Now he's at Chatham House. He's taken open questions. He's willing to answer questions openly. We did not see the same from the other sides. And I think that is a sign of confidence on their side, that at least on the matter of principle, they are on the right side of this argument.
Ali Shihabi, it does sound like this is not going to be resolved soon, because the foreign minister in these remarks in London was not giving much ground.
No, I don't think it's going to be solved soon, because you have to remember, this is the result of 20 years of tension, a feeling by the surrounding countries that Qatar was actively working to undermine their security. And they have gone through a lot of mediation and efforts, withdrawing ambassadors, etc. So the patience had run out. So they have taken this, extreme step, if you want, but it's a step short of war, really, to solve this problem once and for all. Now, the Qataris have the resources to, hold out for quite a long time. So I don't think this is going to end quickly, and I don't think the countries expected it to end quickly. They did not embark on such a decisive step, thinking that Qatar is going to fold in 24 hours. I think what they expect will happen, and what I expect will happen, is that the pressure internally in Qatar over the next year or maybe 2 years or longer will increase, because ultimately the Qatari people have no interest in being ostracized from their surroundings. Qatar is a family member that has worked against its family, and it's being cut off. And ultimately, it's psychological pressure that will bring them back in the fold. And that's not going to happen in a week or two.
Sultan Barakat, there we are, a prediction that Qatar will fold, basically. But there is another way this could go, because Qatar provides a lot of, basically, the electricity, effectively, for the UAE. I think 40%, is it? Something like that. Could this end up with a blockade back?
Well, I hope it doesn't last much longer, this whole blockade. As you know, it's come as a shock to the region, and really a very irrational act to have been taken. And the accusation, as have been explained earlier by the minister and many analysts, of politicizing terrorism is really a bad excuse for this, I think. Having said that, Qatar hasn't so far taken a retaliation action on all the countries, including their airlines, their political missions, etc. And of course, they can go down that route. And if they do, I think it would be a total disaster for the region. They're not only supplying the United Arab Emirates with 30 to 40% of its power, they're supplying Dubai with 80% of its electricity. Now, you can imagine if Qatar decides to turn off the supplies to Dubai, what kind of crisis we're going to have at the regional and international level. And therefore, I think what the minister ended up with is really the logical way forward. We should put aside all the rhetoric, all the single selective examples of bad behavior here and there, and approach this with an open mind for dialogue.
Okay.
The GCC...
We're grateful. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Sultan Barakat and Ali Shihabi.